He said it's associated with the events where Christ meets Peter and says, "Feed my sheep." So we're here to discuss that particular event. Now, in terms of the history and archaeology, very quickly, this site was a Christian church from Byzantine times. So 4th century, they built a Christian church here. It is built here because there's 7 springs on this hill that we're looking at. And so this was a place, if you were going to have big groups come together and have Sermon on the Mount and stuff, you'd need a source of water. Source of water is here. The pilgrims came, the Christians saw it, they built this church here. That got destroyed as time passed by. Christianity faded away, the church fell into ruins, and then it was rebuilt in the late 19th, early 20th century. And so we've got the church in there, and inside there's a big table that they call the Table of Christ, and it's associated with what's called the Last Breakfast. Why? Because it's where Jesus feeds the apostles breakfast. Now, it's a very interesting situation in which this occurs. This is the last chapter in John. It's John 21. It is associated then with the resurrection narratives found in John. We've got to understand that John has very specific points in mind when he tells these stories. He's not like the Synoptic Gospels, which are kind of more narrative. He's writing to advanced Christians who've already accepted Christ and want to understand Christ's nature a little bit more. So turn to John chapter 21, verse 1, and we'll take it from there and look at this. So this is post-resurrection, and verse 1. After these things, that is earlier resurrection narratives in 22 and 21, Jesus showed himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias. Where are we? Sea of Tiberias, right? And Sea of Galilee, Sea of Tiberias is the same thing. It's just a different name for the sea. Why Tiberias? The biggest city, just right down the coast. Biggest city back then, biggest city now is still Tiberias. Who is Tiberias named after? Tiberius the emperor, the Roman emperor. It was one of the Herod's sons, built the city and named it after the emperor, just like Herod the Great named Caesarea after the emperor, right? So this is a mechanism by which the Herod's family shows their loyalty to the emperor. So it's kind of ironic that the city is named after the emperor under which Christ was crucified. The Sea of Tiberias here. There were together Simon Peter and Thomas called Didymus. Why is he called Didymus? Means twin in Greek, and Toma in Aramaic means twin. So his Aramaic name is the twin, his Greek name Didymus. They call him the twin too. Nathanael of Cana, where's that? Right up by Nazareth, right? I think you guys drove by on the way from Nazareth to here, right? The sons of Zebedee, who are those? Andrew and... Isn't it John? James and John. Oh well. Simon Peter saith to them, I'm going fishing. And they said unto him, we will also go with thee. So they're off into the fishing boat, and you saw that down at Nof Gennesaret, the type of boat they would have been in, right? They entered the ship, and immediately, and they went out at night, but caught nothing. Why go out at night? Any fishermen here? Yeah, the fish have feeding patterns and the ways they swim, and they'll come around at different times of day and night in different places. So that's what they're doing.
At night on the beach, you'll see fishing boats out in the Galilee, lights on the water. So look for them in the evening.
So you got a better chance of getting fish at night. But when morning was come, now this is important because John is always using motifs from the temple. And what happens at morning at the temple? There's an evening sacrifice and a morning sacrifice. So the evening sacrifice was the Passover sacrifice. This is now the morning sacrifice. So you've got to understand the way ancient Israelite temple worked. But the morning comes, and that's when you offer a sacrifice. And what is a sacrifice in Jewish ideology, Jewish temple ideology? What's the sacrifice? It means all sorts of things. But one of the things it means is you share a meal with God. You take an animal, you slaughter it, you give part to God, and that part is burned on the altar, and the rest you eat for yourself. So notice the sacrificial motif is in here because Christ is now offering the morning sacrifice, which is going to be the fish and the bread that he gives to the disciples. And now it's God sharing a sacrifice with man rather than man sharing a sacrifice with God. They see Jesus on the shore, but the disciples knew not that it was Jesus. So imagine the sun just coming up over the mountain there. It's, just dawn. You can see a figure walking along the shore, but it's not bright enough, clear enough to see who it is. And then Jesus calls to him, "Children, have ye any meat or fish?" What do they say? "No, we haven't caught anything." So they think it's maybe some guy come to buy fish from them. And he said unto them, "Cast the net on the right side of the ship, and you shall find." So put the net on the other side. What does it happens? They cast and were not able to draw it because of the multitude of fishes. Therefore, the disciple whom Jesus loved, who's that? John, right? And he's the author of this gospel, right? Does he ever name himself in the gospel? No, he always calls himself the disciple whom Jesus loved. That's might seem a little arrogant, right? I'm the one Jesus loved best, but that's not what he means by this. It's kind of an ideology, or it's a statement about relationships with the apostles, with Jesus, and things like that. Anyway, it's John. John says it's the Lord. Now, why would he think it's the Lord just because they catch a bunch of fish? Right, it had happened before when they were when he kind of first calls them. This is what happens, right? The same type of miracle. So John says, "Oh my gosh, that's exactly what happened before," and he recognizes it's the Lord. Not really because they can see him yet, because it's still just early morning light, but because of the miracle. And when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he girt his fisher coat unto him, for he was naked, and did cast himself into the sea. So he, when they go out and working on the ships, they strip off their clothes and swim around and stuff in the water, and now he jumps in and swims to shore. The other disciples came in a little ship. Think of the one we saw down there. For it was not far from land, 200 cubits. How far is that? 100 yards, something like that. So it's about the length of a football field. So you can imagine the ship out, 100 yards offshore. As soon as they were come to land, they saw a fire of coals, and fish laid on, and bread. So Jesus is cooking them food. Now notice, they're bringing in the fish. Where does Jesus get this fish and bread? Well, he could have bought it at the store, but what other great event happens here that's celebrated down at the other church at Tabgha that we're going to in just a few minutes? That was the miracle of the feeding of 5,000 with the bread and the fish. So he is replicating this miracle now at the end of his ministry, okay? That's why they're emphasizing bread and fish. And what about the coals? The coals were put on the incense altar in the temple, and that's where you offered the greatest offering, which was incense. That was considered the highest offering, not the blood sacrifice, which was outside the temple, but the incense was offered right before the veil. So this coal idea, remember Isaiah 6, where they take the coal off the altar and touch Isaiah's lips? It's that type of thing. Jesus said, "Bring the fish you have caught." Simon Peter went up and drew the net full of great fishes, 153, and for all that many the net was not broke. And Jesus says, "Come and dine." And none of the disciples dared ask, "Who art thou?" knowing it was the Lord. Now, why that? They know it's the Lord. They don't. This is the resurrected Lord, right? I mean, they think it's the Lord, but how are we going to interact with him? This is a strange event, right? You see Jesus sitting on the shore cooking bread and fish for you for breakfast. I mean, you can understand they're kind of disconcerted. Then they die.